If you have ever been told that your chronic pain, digestive flares, or crushing fatigue are just part of the package of being hypermobile, or if you spent years being told that your symptoms are a mystery because you don't look sick, today's episode is your permission to expect more from your health. Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is often treated as a checklist of things that you just have to live with. But what if your body isn't a lost cause? What if it just needs a completely different set of instructions and a more foundational level of support to finally thrive? Today, I am joined by Jennifer Parkinson of EDS Nutritionist, and we're moving beyond the surface level talk of joint pain and diving into the science of EDS, specifically why the gut, the brain, and our minerals are the missing links to feeling strong and supported in a body that feels like it's constantly shifting. We're talking about how to stop with the expensive guesswork of supplement chasing and how to build a body that is actually responding to the care you give it. Welcome to Healthy Buzz, the podcast for women who are craving honest answers in a supported community. Hosted by Brandy Homerding, a certified nutrition therapy practitioner who believes your body isn't broken, but the narrative around women's health is. Each week, we're diving deep into holistic health topics, challenging the one-size-fits-all approach, and empowering you to trust your own informed intuition. Get ready to feel seen, supported, and seriously informed. This is Healthy Buzz, where collaboration meets unfiltered transparency in women's health. Jennifer Parkinson is a certified functional nutrition practitioner with a bachelor's degree in human performance management and nutrition. She is currently completing a master's in applied clinical nutrition and plans to sit for her board exam to become a board-certified nutrition specialist. As the founder of EDS Nutritionist, Jennifer specializes in supporting individuals with EDS, mast cell activation syndrome, and postural or static tachycardia syndrome, who are struggling with the chronic pain, fatigue, and brain fog, gut dysfunction, and daily instability. After navigating her own complex health journey and experiencing years of medical dismissal, she now combines advanced clinical training with functional testing to help clients uncover the underlying drivers of their symptoms so that they can finally understand their bodies and feel stable again. Jennifer, welcome to today's show.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited.
I have been wanting to talk about this topic for a while because it's been popping on my radar a lot more. So to start off, I would love to hear more about your personal journey with EDS. Can you explain to the listeners what it is as well?
Yeah, so my journey is quite long. I always tell people I have like 12 different lives because of just how everything has unfolded. But my journey started long before I even had the name Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And I was a teenager, I was a competitive swimmer and was very active and everything. And then I started having joint pain and going to the doctor. They would give me ibuprofen. We'd go to physical therapy, ice on my shoulders, everything like that. And just kept getting progressively worse and worse to the point where even lifting a gallon of milk was like the hardest thing for me to do. And so we saw a bunch of surgeons and we did some exploratory surgeries. And then when I was 16, I ended up having my first shoulder surgery. And then about 6 months later, I had 3 abdominal surgeries. I had my appendix out, my gallbladder, and then I had an emergency obstructive bowel a couple days after that. And basically my whole life did a complete 180 in a matter of like 6 months. And I ended up getting pulled from the pool. I ended up having multiple shoulder surgeries after that. And I kept going on. It wasn't even until I was about 22 years old that I finally got my diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And at that time, it's been about 15 years now since I was diagnosed. Like, I didn't even know what it was. It wasn't even on my radar. Like, I wasn't even trying to get a diagnosis. It was just like, a doctor was like, I think you have this. And I was serving a mission for my church. They were like, you need to actually go and get this treated. So I went back home, saw a genetic specialist, and he was like, yeah, you absolutely do have this. And then basically he was like, and you just need to learn how to live with your life and your symptoms and just learn to accept this quality of life. And they were like, don't work out. Basically, nothing you will do is going to help. And there's not one specialist that you can see. Like, you just need to go to multiple specialists. So if you have gut issues, you go to a gastrologist. If you have heart issues, you go to your cardiologist. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, and at that point, I had already had, I think, 6 or 7 surgeries. I have endometriosis as well. And so that was another journey all in itself. So, fast forward about 20 years now, and I continued to kind of navigate that and just basically didn't take the answers they were giving me at what they were giving it to me. Like, I was like, no, there's got to be something else. Like, I used to be a perfectly healthy 16-year-old girl, and now you guys are all basically like yeah, this is your life. Learn to live with it. And so that's kind of like where my passion has come from. And so then I have went and gone to get education, have worked with providers myself, and learned how to understand that there's actually a lot of things that you can do to support your body if you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And for those who don't know, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder. And when you think of connective tissue, oftentimes when people think of hypermobility, EDS, they think you're really flexible, like you're really stretchy. And it's actually a lot more than that, because it is a connective tissue disorder. It affects the collagen of your skin, of your whole body. And your whole body is made of connective tissue. So it affects your eyes, it can affect your skin, your digestive system, like it affects everything. And in my case, it did affect everything. When I remember when I was about 21, they found a heart murmur and they had never seen that before. And so they're like, what's going on? I had echocardiograms. I had 4 leaks in my heart that they're like, we can't do anything about it. We're just going to watch it. And just, all these things that I was like, this is so bizarre to me. Like, you're telling me like there's nothing we can do. And basically they would just be like, yeah, so like if it gets worse, like come back. And I'm like, but that's why I'm here. Like it is worse. Like that's just basically the responses I kept getting. And so that's where my practice developed and where I started getting more education and just started looking outside of the conventional space, because in the conventional space, we really look at things like physical therapy, we look at pain management programs, and basically just like managing symptoms instead of actually trying to address what some of these underlying causes are.
Wow, so much I want to unpack here with this. The word hypermobile. First, let's describe what that is for the listeners, because somebody may not know what that actually means.
So hypermobile, and I think everybody's going to kind of have a different definition. If you ask a physical therapist, they're probably going to have a different definition. But when people think hypermobile, it's basically like your joints are moving past the normal capacity that somebody who doesn't have it has. So, we'll see a lot of hyperextended like knees and elbows and different things like that. In my case, I had a lot of my shoulders would slip and slide out of the sockets quite often, which is why I had so many surgeries, which ended up not working. Now I know that. But so, the hypermobility part is basically like your body just doesn't have the correct underlying connective tissue. It's weaker than the average person. And so they struggle with joint instability. They struggle with more bruising, different things like that on the skin, and then a lot of things that are going on internally.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I'm hearing too, when you were describing your story, that this is a genetic disorder that you ended up getting a diagnosis from a geneticist. So when we think about that, because some people might be like, well, how do I go? Where do I even start with like getting that diagnosis? Because some people have been dealing with their symptoms for a very long time. And maybe we're going to get into more of the symptoms and all that stuff, but like, is it always receiving a diagnosis from a geneticist? Is that the way that EDS is diagnosed?
Not anymore. Back when, this was 15 years ago or so that I was diagnosed, like that's who had to diagnose me, was a genetic specialist. But now, I have clients that it's their general practitioner that diagnosed them. It's a rheumatologist that has diagnosed them. And there's actually more doctors that are coming out now that actually specialize in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So sometimes they will seek out those doctors. So not necessarily. And I also think it kind of depends on the doctor, because I think some doctors are like, if they don't believe in the diagnosis or if they don't know enough about it, then they will refer you to somebody who has a little bit more knowledge in it.
Okay, amazing. Awesome. And Jennifer's going to be our expert on all of this today. So when we're thinking about like somebody gets a EDS diagnosis, it can feel very defeating to somebody, I'm sure, to be like, oh my gosh. And especially looking back, people can maybe feel a little betrayed by the healthcare system, but then also feel like, wow, my body is really betraying me. So why is it like you just have to live with it narrative so prevalent when it comes to EDS?
I think it's because there's just so much lack of education around it. And it's a very complex genetic disorder. And most of the time, people they don't take the time to start connecting things together. They don't take the time to actually like look at things, because it is a multi-system disorder. And where it is genetic, we can't cure that genetic disorder, right? But we can influence how our body responds to it. It's actually called epigenetics, and it's extremely well researched. And most symptoms that people struggle with in EDS aren't just coming from like one place. They're coming from systems that aren't being well supported. So we're not changing that underlying collagen structure, but we are addressing like basically what is very possible is improving the body's functions and improving and supporting the body properly, so that like these symptoms that people experience aren't as prominent as they can be, but instead we're just kind of brushed off because basically everybody's looking at these symptoms in isolation. Like if you have a gut issue, like if you're bloated, then they just look at that. They're not looking to see, are we having brain fog at the same time? Are we having really bad periods? Like we're not connecting all of the dots, which is what's so frustrating for a lot of us, is because a lot of times people will just see that diagnosis, EDS, and they'll just blame it on that. They'll be like, oh, it's because you have EDS. That's why. Instead of actually like zooming out and looking at the whole picture.
Yeah. Something that I've heard is about the triad that EDS can be a compromise of, because as you talked about, it's multi-system. Can you talk a little bit more about that triad?
Yeah, so a lot of things that we see associated with it, we call it like the big three trifecta. And it's Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, it's mast cell activation syndrome, and it's POTS. So these typically are all correlated together. You don't necessarily, if you have one, you're going to have the other. But I often see a lot of my clients, even if they don't necessarily have that MCAS diagnosis, they're on that spectrum and they're in that more histamine type space. Same with like POTS and different things like that. So when I'm dealing with somebody who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I always have to keep in the back of my mind that they might have some POTS things going on. They might have some MCAS things going on. Instead of just, again, looking at one diagnosis, we've got to think of the whole multi-system area that's going on.
Do you mind explaining for the listeners what MCAS is and what POTS is?
Yeah, so MCAS is mast cell activation syndrome. We all have mast cells in our body. And what happens though, when people have mast cell activation, the way I kind of describe it is they're overactive. They're to the point where it's a red light, green light situation. But in their case, the light is always green. It never turns red. And so they can just constantly react to anything. Like their cells are just basically extremely sensitive. And so they might have a lot of food sensitivities. They might have a lot of anxiety. They might have a lot of brain fog, insomnia, like a lot of those symptoms that again are looked like in isolation, but they are actually all connected. And then POTS, I look at it more as when people hear that, they think, oh, they get really dizzy and they pass out, but it's actually related to a lot. We have a lot of blood pressure fluctuations. We even will see a lot of dizziness and fatigue, a lot of brain fog. And we do see dizziness and we do see people like passing out. We want to look at it as well as like the nervous system and how the nervous system is responding. They all kind of overlap and correlate with one another because they all are linked together, but oftentimes they're looked at very separately, but they're often tied together.
That is very helpful. Thanks for explaining all of that. So we have talked about like the hypermobility, and then you have briefly kind of talked about some of the internal symptoms like brain fog, digestive issues, chronic fatigue. Why are they so common in the EDS community?
So oftentimes people with EDS, they feel like their symptoms are often all over the place. So we'll see a lot of like fatigue, brain fog, digestion issues, and there's not actually like a clear pattern. But it comes down to the fact that EDS, like we've said, it's not just affects the joints, it's a multi-system effect. So we see a lot of these symptoms overlapping because we see a lot of nervous system dysregulation. I want to be clear when I say nervous system dysregulation, because I think people think if I do some breath work or if I go to therapy, like that will solve all of it. Nervous system is actually it's a multi-level system. And so if we don't have, again, the right foundations in place, like good mineral balances, if we don't have even things like blood sugar stability, different things like that, you can't outbreathe a dysregulated nervous system if you don't have the actual support that it needs. And so I think sometimes that's often overlooked. Like people are like, yeah, I'm working on a lot of nervous system, which I love that people recognize that nervous system is so important. But we can also, again, we can do all those things, but if we're not actually looking at what's possibly causing some of that dysregulation, like mineral imbalances, gut infections, different things like that, then you can only get so far. So we see a lot of nervous system that's associated with those. The gut is very impactful here. So even if you don't necessarily have like those classic gut symptoms, we always want to keep that into consideration because with people who have EDS, again, that it's a connective tissue. Your gut is all made up of connective tissue. So we'll have a lot of like more slow motility. So we'll see a lot of bloating, constipation, gas, different things like that. We'll see more like reflux or just like GERD type symptoms. and having a hard time just like breaking food down properly, which is where we'll see a lot of like food sensitivities and histamine reactions. And so a lot of people will get this diagnosis of IBS that's associated with it, but it doesn't really explain like why it's happening. And so even if I have somebody who comes to me that has issues and they say they have brain fog and they have fatigue, I actually always want to look at their gut, because more often than not, I usually find something in there that's actually affecting that brain fog and that neurological and cognitive function, even if they don't have those like classic symptoms. And other reasons is like these symptoms are overlooked is we see a lot of energy production is like compromised. Your body needs nutrients, especially minerals, to make energy. And with EDS, we commonly see poor absorption because of gut issues. We see a higher demand. We know when you are more stressed, and it doesn't matter what the stress is, this can be physical, emotional, mental, however it is, we're going to burn through minerals at a faster rate. And so when somebody has EDS, they're already kind of compromised because they have that higher demand because their body has to work much harder. And then we see a lot of like depletion in these key nutrients, and that can affect just the cells of our body as well. And then we see a lot of like immune histamine involvement. Like we see quite a bit things that are going on, and it's basically a feedback loop. If we've got gut dysfunction, we're going to have poor nutrient absorption, which then worsens your fatigue and your brain fog. If you've got nervous system stress, it's going to slow down your digestion. It's going to worsen your gut symptoms. And then if we have some immune activation going on, it's going to increase your inflammation, and it basically starts to worsen, everything else.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So what I'm hearing is that it's really complex. It's a lot of different things and moving parts. And then working with the right practitioner is going to be really helpful for understanding and like who's going to put all those pieces of the puzzle together like you do. You're not just like, okay, we're just focusing on the gut health. I love this, how you said you can't outbreathe nervous system dysregulation. You have to like really think about what are the other things that impact the nervous system. So what would you say are some of the commonly overlooked symptoms for people who have EDS?
Honestly, like all of them. I feel like they're just all overlooked because, again, people think EDS, so they're like, oh, you're really flexible, or like maybe you have some pain and joint slip and sliding out of the socket and different things like that. But big ones is brain fog and cognitive issues. I see that quite often. I see debilitating fatigue. So we're not just talking like you wake up tired, like we're talking you take a shower and you're done for the rest of the day. Or you try and do the dishes, like, and you're done, not even just for the rest of the day, sometimes like for a couple days or even a couple weeks. So that often gets overlooked. A lot of digestive issues get overlooked. And oftentimes people who come to me have a lot of the IBS diagnosis or the GERD diagnosis. And that comes with like the bloating, the constipation, the diarrhea, food sensitivities, different things like that. Food sensitivities and histamine reactions, I feel like get overlooked a lot too. And then like mineral imbalances, which most people don't look at, but I'm huge with the minerals, but like just the electrolyte and like the hydration. And we do know like a lot of people, especially if they have POTS or they're in this trifecta area, like salt, increase your sodium. But what people don't realize is that minerals work together and they also work against each other. Some of them do. So if we're only focusing on the sodium and we're not paying attention to like our potassium and our magnesium, that's where sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm like literally like eating salt every day. And they're like, I don't feel any better. And oftentimes it's because we're overlooking these other mineral balances that are happening.
That makes a ton of sense. And so what I'm also hearing you say then is a lot of like looking at some functional lab testing. And with the functional lab testing, how does that help a woman with EDS stop the expensive like trial and error phase of just like trying all these random things, random supplements that they're seeing advertised on TikTok or going down the Reddit rabbit hole and like, hey, I heard I had EDS and so I need to try this random supplement, and then they're not feeling better.
I think testing is extremely important. Not only is it validating, if the right person is reading it, I have to emphasize that, because some people will go and they'll get these GI maps and they'll go and get these mineral tests. But if they're not being read correctly, keeping your symptoms, your diagnoses in mind, then you are kind of like going to be wasting money, because then you're going to try and DIY it yourself. So I think functional testing can be extremely important. Making sure that you're zooming out on the whole picture. So again, finding a practitioner, even if they don't necessarily specialize in EDS, but that they are willing to look at your whole picture. Because I have worked with practitioners who have not and do not specialize in Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, but they were willing to take the time to do the research, to ask questions so that they could help me. And I get where it comes from, because I was in that same boat. There's not a lot of people out there who know a lot about these diagnoses. And so we're often stuck basically putting the pieces of the puzzle together by ourselves, which then in return ends up we're wasting money on supplements, we're wasting money on food sensitivity tests and different doctor's appointments and different things like that, hoping we're going to get a different solution every time we go to a new practitioner or a new doctor. But in reality, we're really just kind of throwing money down the drain if we're not seeing results. And so I get the want and the need to, one, be able to take a supplement or to get to take a medication, and then it helps you feel better, right? Like we want to feel better. That's what all my clients come to me. They're like, I want to feel better. But you shouldn't have to be on 20 supplements to feel better. And you should be able to see that change happen sooner rather than later. Like if you're working with a practitioner for 6, 12 months and you've seen really no improvement, then we need to kind of like pull back and actually start thinking like, are we actually going the right route? Are we putting all the pieces together? Are we just looking at one piece of the puzzle?
Hey, Healthy Buzz community. Have you been curious about using a continuous glucose monitor to unlock powerful insights to your metabolic health? Imagine seeing in real time how your body responds to different meals, different workouts, and also the effects of stress. Now, what if you could experience those benefits without being locked into any type of recurring subscription like some of the other continuous glucose monitor programs out there? With my Blood Sugar Savvy course, you'll get exactly that. You'll receive access to 7 engaging learning modules, 2 continuous glucose monitors to start your wellness journey, plus 4 weekly one-on-one video strategy sessions with me where I'll personally guide you to understanding your CGM data. We'll work together to identify your unique blood sugar patterns and create customized strategies for better energy, mood, and overall well-being. Oh, and by the way, this is especially crucial during your peri- and postmenopausal years. Blood Sugar Savvy is about understanding your body on a deeper level, implementing practical strategies, and gaining sustainable knowledge to support your overall health and wellness. Ready to get blood sugar savvy and take control of your metabolic health? Healthy Buzz listeners can save $30 simply by using the code BUZZ at checkout. Your personalized blood sugar journey starts now. There is so much I want to say about all that you said in that. Like, so many things.
Well,
I'm like taking all these notes over here because there's so many things. One, I love that you point out here that you need the practitioner to connect the dots. The person sitting in front of me and the lab results that we get. I have so many times people are like popping in my DMs, hey, how can I just order that test? No, that's not what we do. One, I need to make sure that this test is appropriate for you. And yes, I know that you want the data, but I need to know way more information about you. It would be very irresponsible of me to just be like, hey, I know nothing about you, but go ahead and like order this, get this test. Here's my link. Order it on your own. Super irresponsible. The other thing that I noticed too, though, is that when I do start asking more questions to people, some people get really, do I want to say like angry and irritated that I'm taking time to ask them questions about their symptoms. Do you experience that too?
Yes. Not as much, I think, as some others can, mainly because when people are coming to me, they're like, I need someone who understands what it's like to live in this space. But I will say I even used to get like that because I was so tired of people not understanding what I was going through, but then being like, oh, hey, so-and-so tried this and this helped them. You should try it. And that is just like really annoying and aggravating for, I think, most people, whether you have EDS or not, because it's like, but you don't know anything about me. So I think sometimes when we start to ask questions, it's almost like, oh, are they just going to try and give me like a cookie cutter approach, which is what a lot of them have experienced. You know, they've been to naturopathic doctors, they've been to even different functional providers. And instead of them actually doing tests, being explained what the tests mean when their results come back and putting the pieces together for them, they are basically just given a cookie cutter approach. Try this low histamine, try low FODMAP, try AIP, you know, different things like that, when we're not really addressing why everything is happening to begin with. It's more just like, oh yeah, you have H. pylori, let's just kill the H. pylori. But again, if we're not addressing how did the H. pylori get there to begin with, then you're just going to keep reinfecting yourself with H. pylori. So again, it's all about zooming out, finding a practitioner not only who is willing to look at your whole picture, but who's going to work with you. And I think that's really important because you know your body best. Nobody knows my body better than I know my body. And so I think that's where it can also come, that defensiveness, is because we're so used to people like practitioners and doctors and stuff telling us, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Or no, this is what I think you should do. So this, like, there's no discussion. there's a lot of gaslighting, there's a lot of dismissal. And so that's where I think sometimes that unintentional, almost like prickly feeling that you're just like, oh, but don't sit here and tell me what I need. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely see that happen sometimes. And it's usually coming from just a place of trauma and a place of just being dismissed and overlooked and being gaslit for years. Because people who are dealing with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, POTS, MCAS, this isn't like they've been dealing with it for a couple years. This is decades these symptoms have been going on, and that they've just been pushed off to another specialist, and then that specialist pushes them off to another specialist. And so there's just a lot of fear, a lot of, I don't want to waste more money if you're just going to tell me there's nothing you can do and then just send me on my way. So there's definitely sometimes a lot of, that like fear and defensiveness that can come out sometimes.
Yeah. Like I get sometimes like, this seems like a lot of questions. Can you just tell me? And I'm just like, no, I can't actually, because I don't know you. And I think too, people get like that defensiveness, or they get triggered because they're so used to the way traditional healthcare runs, where you have like the 7 to 12 minute appointment,
10-15 minute appointment,
right? Yeah. And it's like quick rapid fire, and there's no time for questions. There's just time for, you have that symptom, here's your prescription. You have that symptom, lose weight. You have that symptom, exercise more, eat less. Like there's no engaging conversation and asking the really important questions to actually understand. So I feel like women are getting triggered when they get asked more questions because they're not used to it.
I agree. I 100% agree. We're used to these 7-minute, 10-minute appointments, and we're not used to people actually like looking at our chart. I mean, half the time, how many of us have filled out an appointment sheet at the doctor's office, and then we go back there and they ask us the same questions that we just filled out. And we're like, then why did I just fill that out? Like, why did I just take 12 minutes to like fill that thing out? You know, I think it's like shock almost too. Like, it's almost like, wait, why do you want to know so much about me? And so then when they come to practitioners like you and me and stuff, like, we're like, no, I want to know everything. Like, I want to know, were you born vaginally or were you born C-section? Like, I want to know all the information. And they're always like, whoa. Like, my first appointment with my clients when I onboard them is 90 minutes.
Same.
Because I'm like, I need to understand exactly what's going on. I need to understand patterns. And it's because of that, that's how I'm able to get their results. Like, I have a client right now that if I would have just gotten a 10-minute thing, I wouldn't have put together. Like, he came to me having a lot of digestive distress. He started having concussions when he was like 9 years old. And I was like, that is a big piece to your puzzle and to why your digestive system is so off. But if I would have just said, oh, you have constipation, let's take some Miralax, or let's put you on magnesium or prokinetic, instead of actually like fixing, like understanding that there's this gut brain connection, he would have just been in the same place. And so it's, again, zooming out. We got to look at the whole picture. We got to understand your life and what's been going on.
Yeah, 100%. I'm always like, I know that we have talked a lot already, but I need to talk to you more for like an hour and a half to understand even more, because I don't know you. Like you said, each person is the expert of their own body. And for me to understand so that I can make appropriate recommendations and understand the results that we're seeing on the test, I need to know the most I can about you.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, so another question that I have, what are your thoughts on food sensitivity tests?
I don't like them. I don't think that they're accurate. I don't think they're reliable. And honestly, I feel like they're a waste of money. They should never be the first line of testing. If somebody has come and we've done everything and they're like, yeah, I'm 70% better, but I do notice that when I eat gluten or whatever, like then okay, then let's trial that. And I fell into the same trap, right? Like, I'm sure all of us have done some sort of food testing at some point in our life. It comes back with all the foods that you have been eating most of the time. And so then you're like, what do I eat? And then you're basically sitting there for the next 6 months to a year trying to avoid different foods when you don't really feel that much better. So food sensitivity testing, I think they're a waste of time. I don't think that they're appropriate for most people. And we need to, again, look at the bigger picture. You know, it's one thing if they're like, yeah, I've been lactose intolerant since I was a kid, then you probably are really lactose intolerant. But if you were able to tolerate dairy up until you were 25 and now suddenly you can't tolerate dairy, and then you have 5 other food sensitivities that you've noticed that I can't eat tomatoes, I can't eat dark chocolate, I can't eat, all this, that's when I'm like, okay, well, we need to figure out like why you're having all these sensitivities instead of just having you keep eliminating. Because what ends up happening is people will eliminate all these foods. Then they'll realize like, oh, now I'm having sensitivity to eggs. So then they'll take their eggs out. Now I'm having sensitivity to this. And then they'll take, and so it's more of just a frustration. I feel like when I ask one of the questions on my forums, like what foods do you avoid? And I literally have had people put, it's easier for me to just put what foods I can eat because that's how many things they're avoiding. You don't have to live that way. That's a big red flag. Like something's going on in their digestive system that their body is not able to break down those food.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very rare that I would run a food sensitivity test. I'm always like, we got to know why your body's not tolerating these foods. And it's going to be rooted in like some digestive dysfunction that's going on, your immune system overactive because of like some leaky gut situation. It's always rooted in the gut.
It should never be the first line of defense. Sometimes it's appropriate, but again, it should never be the first test that you run. There needs to be other questions than tests that should be ran first.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're like making a list of foods that like, I can't eat that anymore, just like Jen said, like it's going to keep compounding your list of what you can't eat until you figure out like why your gut is not tolerating these foods. So we always got to start with the gut. GI map, 100%.
Yeah.
Look at the gut.
Love GI map.
Love the GI map. When we start looking at what actually is driving symptoms, what are some different improvements that you're going to see with somebody who has EDS?
I think one depends on the person, but honestly, most clients that I work with, they were at 10% before, like they're like, I can barely function. We're really getting them between 70 and 80%. They're doing amazing. What I actually do with my clients is when I meet with them at the very beginning, I will go over their top 3 goals that they want to work on me with. And then I will have them rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being amazing. I have no problems with this. And 1 being, I have problems with this every single day. Most of the people who come to me, they're starting off 1s, like 1s out of 10. Like they're like horrible. Like, can I put it as a -1? Like that's what they want to do. By the time they're done working, we're in the 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, even 10 out of 10 for some people. And so you're going to see improvement in all of your symptoms. Like you really will. As to how soon you'll see that depends on what's going on, depends on your case, depends on your history. I always tell people if you have a long surgical history like myself, then it's going to take a lot longer than 4 to 6 months for you to heal likely, just because you have that physical surgical trauma going on. Even if it was 20 years ago, you had the surgery. If we didn't heal from it properly, it's basically like we have to almost help your body refigure out how to work. Like if you don't have a gallbladder, we've got to retrain things. Like if we don't have a large colon, if we don't have a colon, then we've got to retrain things. So kind of depends on the person, but you should be seeing improvement in most of your symptoms, if not all. Like you can get up to the 70, 80% easily.
Yes, I love that. There's hope, everybody. There is hope for your symptoms. I think too, some people feel really defeated because they have worked with different practitioners. I'm having a conversation with somebody right now who's like, I am hesitant because I've tried so many things in the past, but nothing seems to work. So what makes me think that like you're going to actually be able to help me? And I'm like, that's a really good question, but I can tell you what I do and how I do approach things. And like, I do not leave a stone unturned at all.
Yeah.
And Jen and I are both in the Unconventional Collaborative. Shout out to them, because that's a huge place for us to go and ask more questions and have our peers like look at things and give us insight to what may not be blatantly obvious to us.
I mean, I get that a lot too. They're like, I mean, I've tried everything else. Like after your program, am I just going to regress to all of my symptoms? And my answer to them is, as long as you keep doing what I tell you to do, if you work on your foundations, I pound into my clients' foundations. Like, how are your foundations? How's our blood sugar? How's our minerals? Are we getting outside? But if we go back to all of our old habits, then like, yeah, you're probably going to have some regression. But if we're fixing the things at the beginning, if we have no stomach acid and we fix the stomach acid so that the H. pylori and the parasites and different things can't return, then the likelihood of regression is pretty low. Now, with that being said, you're human, you have a genetic disorder, you're gonna have flares. We're all gonna be in different stressful periods of life, and like you might have some flares, but there aren't going to be, they're gonna put you out for the next couple of weeks. It should be, I know exactly what to do. I always tell my clients, like, we're gonna build you a flare kit over the next 4 months. And so as you heal, then when you do have a flare, you know exactly what to do when it happens. Instead of like panicking and being like, I don't know what to do. Like they know exactly what to do. do. And they're like, yeah, no big deal. Like I just move on when it happened. Like it wasn't a big deal. And that's what I think is so important. If your practitioner is not helping you learn how to live after their program, that's a red flag for me. If they're just like, take all these supplements and then like you're good to go. But if we're not teaching them, hey, you know what? You have POTS. Like, so you likely will have some occasional flares with that. So when that happens, we know based off your labs, based off your case, these are some things I would recommend having in your flare kit. Or when you're traveling, this is what I recommend. And we build a flare kit together. You know, I have a whole document that I send to a client and I'm like, I want you to read through this. And then I want you to build your own flare kit and I want you to send it to me, your list, and I'm going to tell you if I think you should add anything else. But I tell them, I'm like, I can make it myself for you, but like, you're not going to learn how to support yourself if you're always relying on me, but I'm going to give you the tools and the structure so you know how to build that. And that's what I think is so important. And what is one question you should ask your practitioner if you're thinking about signing up with them is, do I know what to do after your program, or am I going to just have to keep them coming back to you every 6 months?
Yes. Okay. So this is like really important for our listeners out there. Anytime you are working with any type of practitioner, take advantage of their consultations. Everybody should be offering like some type of consultation before you decide to work with them, and make sure you're interviewing them. This is your opportunity to ask them questions. What does your program look like after I've gone through your program? What do your clients like symptom reduction look like? What's all involved? How much time am I spending? What does my commitment look like? So these are opportunities for you to interview the practitioner just as much as the practitioner is trying to find out if what you're dealing with is something that they feel like is in their wheelhouse and is in alignment with what you want for support. So take advantage of that.
Yeah, I don't let anybody sign on one-on-one with me unless I have had a discovery call with them, because one, it's a lot of time and effort on the client's part to be a part of my program. And it's a lot of money, right? Like it's an investment, but it's also an investment on my end too, because it's not just FaceTime. I'm working on your case for hours outside of our client face-to-face time. And so like, if I don't think I can help you, honestly, I don't want to take you on because I don't want to waste anybody's time. Take advantage of those discovery calls for sure if they offer them.
Yes, absolutely. So something that you mentioned was some of these foundations. And oftentimes people are trying every protocol, every supplement under the sun out there, but they're skipping over the foundational areas. So what are those really unsexy foundations that people keep missing that's not allowing their body to actually respond appropriately to a protocol or to a supplement?
Yeah, so blood sugar is huge. Are we eating enough? Are we balancing our blood sugar? Are we having fiber, fat, carbs, protein? Are we eating consistently throughout the day? Those are all really, really important. I mean, it's important for anybody, but if you have EDS, POTS, MCAS, it is largely influenced by blood sugar. So if you are somebody who struggles with a lot of brain fog, headaches, different things like that, and you travel, you know, let's say you travel to the airport and then you have a migraine for the next 5 days afterwards, think back to that day. Did you eat like you normally would? Or did you, sit at the airport all day and only had a snack in the morning and then you didn't eat again until that night? Like that's hard on your body, and your body is already going through so much, and we need to make sure we're fueling it properly. Circadian rhythm, get outside. Get that natural light onto your skin. It's the most free thing.
Touch grass.
Yes. It is free. It doesn't cost a thing. And I don't think people realize like how much that natural light influences everything. Digestion, thyroid hormones, like not just thyroid hormones, but any kind of hormones. It's affecting your sleep. It's affecting your energy levels, your cognitive function. Like circadian rhythm is so big, and we've just gotten away from it just as a society and as a culture, just because we're always on screens all day long. We may not go outside because we want to stay in the warm house or the nice air conditioned house. Like get outside, allow yourself to sweat, get sun onto your skin, like get it onto your skin. I'm like so passionate. And I'm like, and it's free. Just do it, guys. Just do it. It's free. Another one is nervous system, kind of like what we talked about before. And where nervous system, it's a multi-layered thing. We still have to address it. If you are never taking time for yourself, if you're never slowing down and just resting, if you have trauma in your past that you haven't resolved, that's definitely going to affect your healing process. Like if you're somebody who just ignores your feelings all the time and doesn't want to cry, doesn't want to feel angry, just tries to be like a chill person, it's okay to feel your feelings, like feel those feelings. And if you feel like you're doing all that, but you're still not getting better, that's a sign there's other stuff going on, like at a deeper level. Another big one that is movement. Get out and move. You don't have to run a marathon. And to be honest, like most people We don't need to be running marathons, but like get out and walk, lift weights. I love Pilates. I love all that, but like get up and throw some weight around. If you're angry, like that's the way to get it out, right? Like it's throwing some weight around. Some other foundational things is minerals is huge for me. So this is more than just even drinking like coconut water with sea salt. Like if you have major mineral imbalances like copper, iron, magnesium, calcium, different things like that, I think of minerals as foundational. If you don't have the spark plugs, which that's what I think of minerals as, they're the spark plugs of like your whole body and your whole health. If they're not firing off the way they need to, everything will start to crumble. So if you don't have enough calcium that's being used properly, if you don't have enough magnesium, if you have a huge mineral imbalance, like that's going to cause stress on the nervous system, on the body. Those are like my big ones. So I always tell people, like, if you ever start to be symptomatic or flaring, always go back to your foundations. Like, how are your foundations? And then they usually are like, well, I actually didn't eat very well yesterday. And I'm not saying you have to eat perfectly, guys. Like, I'm not saying that, like, you're allowed to have some treats and stuff like that. What I'm saying is when I say foundations for blood sugar, it's one, did we eat enough? And are we balancing our blood sugar? And are we eating consistently throughout the day? If you can't say yes to all three of those, then you probably have some blood sugar imbalancing and roller coasters going on throughout the whole day.
Yep. I co-sign all that. I mean, that goes for everybody, not just anybody with EDS. Those are like foundational pieces for every single person. And we so badly want to like gloss over like, oh, did I drink enough water? And we just want to do like, oh, what are the things I can do for my hormones today? No, water for your hormones, babe. Like, don't forget that. Water for your digestion, my friend. Like,
they're not sexy, but like I think about just like how my life is different now, but even just like 5-6 years ago, right? Like I really wasn't getting outside that well. I was working 12-hour shifts, so my blood sugar was probably all over the place. But then you think about your childhood, right? Like a lot of us, we played outside. We ate snacks all the time. We drank out of the hose. We were drinking, like, so it's like, just think back to like, when you were in a healthy state, if you ever were in that state, like think about some of those habits. So they're not sexy and they're probably not going to solve all your problems overnight, but they're going to help with a lot of them for sure. And then that's when we know if you're doing all those foundations and you're like, I'm still stuck, that's when we know further investigation is needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so one of your biggest takeaways is that EDS does not mean that the body can't improve. So what are the most common wins or shifts that you see with somebody when they stop fighting their EDS and actually start supporting their unique physiology?
I mean, pretty much any kind of win that they want to get. I see people getting jobs again. Most of the clients who come to me aren't able to work, or if they have been able to work, it was 5-6 years ago. So they're getting jobs again. They're able to travel again. They have the ability to actually like make food and be able to live every single day, right? Like be able to go on vacations, go to the pool, go on a hike. But like, we're seeing shifts in energy. We're seeing major shifts in brain fog. Food sensitivities are practically gone. They are being able to actually eat, because some people are in that category where they're like, I try to eat and I can't, like I'm nauseous, or I just like I get so sick or whatever it is. They're actually eating like full structured meals. So honestly, in my opinion, the wins with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is they can be as big as you want. You do not have to be limited by that diagnosis. If you have the desire and the want to get better, then you absolutely can, in my opinion.
Yes, I love it. Well, Jen, this was a wonderful conversation. I know that you have a free resource for our listeners today. Would you like to tell them more about this lab guide?
Yeah, so a lot of clients who come to me, and really anybody in this space, they go to their doctor and they get their labs run and they're basically told everything's normal. If you are symptomatic and you are told that your labs are normal, they're not normal. The problem is like nobody's looked at them properly and nobody's zoomed out for them. So I've made just a free lab guide to kind of break down some things that I run on my clients, and specifically for blood ranges, what I'm looking for versus like what the conventional doctors are looking for. They're looking for disease states, they're looking for things like Hashimoto's, iron deficiency, different things like that. But I'm looking at a much tighter range. And so I provide that for people so they can see like that their labs are not normal. Every lab that I run for each client is different per the client and their unique story, but this kind of just gives a general guideline and outline for people to be able to look a little closer at their labs.
Amazing. So helpful. We will put that resource in the show notes so everybody can go and download that. How can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, EDS Nutritionist, and then my website, edsnutritionist.com. Those are going to be the easiest ones to reach out. I do offer free discovery calls. I have a couple one-on-one programs, and then I do have like a mini mineral package that people can purchase if you're a little nervous about, fully diving in and wanting to actually see if further testing is warranted. Then I provide that for people to kind of dip their toe in to see if what's causing their symptoms and if there is a need to investigate further and if you can get better.
Okay, amazing. We'll put all that information on how you can connect with Jen in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. This was a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Healthy Buzz. I hope this conversation has left you feeling seen, supported, and ready to take the next step in your health journey. Love what you heard? Make sure you subscribe to Healthy Buzz so you never miss an honest conversation. And if you found this valuable, please take a moment to leave a review. I truly appreciate it. For exclusive weekly tips and holistic strategies, be sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Remember, this isn't just nutrition, it's permission to trust your body. I'll catch you on the next episode of Healthy Buzz.